What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I'm Will Brinson. I'm your host. It is Thursday, June the 30th. If you're listening in audio or watching on YouTube, we are not live on YouTube. If you are happen to be hanging with us, although maybe we are live on YouTube. I don't know anymore. You know what? Anyway, whatever. Who cares? We're going to talk about some safety, some NFL safety. Joining me to do so, Tyler Sullivan, aka Sully at Tyler Sully on Twitter. Something I should probably say at the beginning of the show and at the end. What's up, buddy? How we doing?
What's going on, Will? How you doing?
I'm good. Let's talk about Boston with somebody. Oh, I know. The wonderful woman, my friend who cuts my hair, KDG, is from Boston.
Oh, yeah?
She was up there visiting her parents recently, and I was like, I do a podcast with my buddy Sully. He's from Boston too, and we're making fun of somebody. Somebody couldn't do. Oh, I knew what it was. She was telling me that she went and saw Fred Armisen at DPAC in Durham, right? And it's like a nice theater because apparently Fred Armisen's dad lives in Durham, so he's down there a bunch. And he was like, "All right, who wants to, somebody yell out like, regions of the country or places in the world, and I'll do the accent." And and she was like, "Boston." And Fred Armisen was like, "I don't really do a good Boston accent." It's like, how? That's like the easiest accent. How can you not do a good Boston accent?
I'll say this. Bostonians very particular about how other people impersonate the accent.
Sure.
Like if you watch a movie and the accent sucks, it could go in Best Picture. But if the accent suck, it's like, no, I didn't like it. Wasn't that good? What's her name?
I feel like you're specifically going after Good Will Hunting here.
No, it was more. What was the one? The Town with Blake Lively. Hers was horrible, and everybody ripped her for it.
Bad Boston accents are almost as bad. Bad Southern accents are probably the worst.
Yeah, that's way more common, I think.
Yeah, because you'll have somebody be like, it's like the Brian Kelly thing. He's like, "My family." It's like, what? I'm sorry, is that a Cajun accent?
It's a nice little tie-in. The Everett native, and all of a sudden now he's a Southern man. It's for reference, like I lived in Everett. Like I used to live in Malden, Everett, which is thick accent area. And no, I didn't really pick up any Southern accents there.
And for those that might think I would making fun of Sully's Boston vocal tendencies, I'm not at all. I find it bad. Like there's nothing that makes me like smile. Like if you'll be talking about like something serious or even just like a football related thing, and like there'll be like a word where it's like just very clearly like a deep like Boston inflection.
It is really weird.
Just makes me smile.
It is really weird because like some of my buddies don't have it. Other people have it worse than me. Like my brother's ridiculous. Like he's what is he, 26 now? But even when he was
is this trading card selling?
Yes, it is. Okay. And like he'd be even like 10 years old. And he sounds like the end of the dude at the bar.
Let me see if I've got it in here. I think it's in my bag. So we as people who watch or listen to the show know, this is not my usual backdrop. We've moved. I'm nomadic for podcast purposes right now. But as I was cleaning out, I found my old 1980s. Is he into baseball or just football?
Baseball, football, really mostly baseball, but I mean, pretty much anything.
Text him and ask him if the 1987 double error Barry Bonds card is worth anything.
1 second. Is the double?
This podcast never, ever, ever fails to deliver.
Oh yeah, come on.
I found. So I was like cleaning out my baseball card stuff, and I found I swear to God, it's somewhere in my bag.
What was the year again?
1987 Topps double error Barry Bonds. Basically, there's two errors on the back of the card. The 3 and the 0 and the numbering got cut off.
Yeah.
And I was like Googling best 87. I happen to have it in like a plastic sleeve apart from the rest of the set because it's just rookie. And the first thing popped up was like, could be worth up to $5,000. I was like, oh.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, all right. Now we're cooking with gas.
Well, that's what happened to him the other day. He went to a thrift shop and walked in, big binder of baseball cards, bought the whole thing. Back of the binder, Jeter rookie card worth crazy money. It's like, you don't think that those things happen, and then they happen.
It does, yeah.
It's like, all right.
Well, that's why, like if you're smart about, if you're like a big collector, you know
what you're looking for.
Right, but you also know, like, I'm gonna like if there's a binder of cards that are sitting at a thrift shop that nobody wants, I'm willing to invest the time and the effort to see if there's actually stuff in there. I think I've got. Is it the Upper Deck Jeter rookie card?
Hold on.
You know what? We probably shouldn't be talking
We
about this.
probably, I mean, we could turn this into instead of the safeties rankings, we can just
Yeah,
talk about cards. It's
yeah.
totally fine.
God, oh, there's one. God.
It was the 1993 Upper Deck SP.
Okay, see, I think I might have that one too. I have a ton of cards from the '90s.
Yeah.
Ty Joseph in the chat. So apparently we are live on YouTube.
Sweet.
Cool. Says Boston is probably my favorite city. Being Irish and from Atlantic, Canada, is both close and culturally relevant. Hate the Bruins though. I hate the Bruins too.
That's about I mean, we got the Canes and we got what is he? Probably Habs. I would assume, right? Where is he in Canada?
No.
And so it's fun. Good town. I enjoy it.
Hey,
fun.
Hey, the Canes are limited. I'm no longer a bandwagon hockey fan. I'm out of Canada. I like Boston too. I haven't been there in forever. The last time I went up there, you know what's weird is yes, my audio is perhaps a little muffled. I am not using my normal setup. As you can see, I've got AirPods in. I'll try and speak up or maybe raise my volume. At any rate, I was going to say that it's been a while since I've been to Boston. I've actually never been to a Red Sox game, but I have been to Fenway to see Fish.
Okay. All right, cool. That's awesome.
Pretty sacrilegious on my part as a sports writer and sports nut. I've been to Fenway for Fish, but never for the Boston Red Sox.
I do that too. Like I very much, especially this time of the year, I very much try to detach as much as humanly possible from all sports. I go to Red Sox games, and obviously the Celtics were just in the NBA Finals, so I'm paying attention. But you try to do your best to get away from it.
Yeah. Sorry, Dom. Yes, Dom puts out he cannot see that I have AirPods in. I do have AirPods in for people who are wondering if the audio is a little different today. Anywho, we have now filibustered 7 minutes worth of the podcast. We should probably get to the actual football discussion. I am apparently looking more like Captain Haddock than normal. Who's Captain Haddock? Is he a burly ship captain or something?
That I don't know. Doesn't ring a bell.
So there's stuff in storage, and I'm terrible at like figuring out like what should be in storage and what should not be in storage. And so naturally, my beard trimmer is in storage. So like, I don't know what to say. Like, it's just going to keep growing. Anyway,
I'm doing the same thing over here.
Yeah, it's beard season.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah. So also, as I mentioned, we're talking about safeties. Also in storage, my soundboard. So apologies in advance. We won't be able to play over and over again. Power in the Bayou from John Breach. We'll just have to fake it and pretend like I'll try it. Yeah, like I'll try to do it and see if that works. He is on the list. He is not number 10 though. Let's talk. Okay, before we get to it, you and I referenced it before the show. Top 10 list. It's an off-season staple, position by position. It's gonna happen. You can't stop it. You can only hope to avoid the landmines. And this is one of the landmines, safety. Because first of all, it's hard to evaluate safety play. Like you can know who are good safeties, but like a lot of safeties do a lot of different things, right?
Yeah.
And second of all, look, pull back the curtain a little bit. You're not getting a bunch of traffic on the top 10 safeties post in late June of the offseason for the NFL site. Like it's just not going to do it unless you just leave Minkah Fitzpatrick off and then Cam Hayward starts chirping it. Is he actually off the list?
I have him off, right?
Oh, he is off the list.
I have him
off.
Okay, trying to get controversial, but I'll explain it.
Okay, well, so is he your? Anyway, it's a tough list to do. Minkah, like you might get chirped by Minkah and 10-10. That's Captain Haddock. All right, my bad. Sorry. I'm all over the place today, man. Literally, like physically, I'm every which way. Anywho, the Minkah you may get traffic because Minkah and Cam Hayward and crew might start chirping at you. Like, who the hell does Tyler Sullivan think he is? Anyway, that was what I was going to point out about the list. Feel free to point out anything you want about the list, your criteria, and maybe why Minkah Fitzpatrick is off the list.
Yeah, so I can, I'll get into all that obviously, but like for me, like you're saying, it's a very difficult position to try to go 1 through 10 with because it's not like quarterback where, yes, there are guys that have different talents like Tom Brady and Lamar Jackson, but they're doing the same job. Safety, they're not necessarily being asked to do the same job. You have guys that are just basically center fielders and they're hanging out in the back end of the secondary and they're playing center field and they're just kind of being that coverage guy. But then you also have those players like Tyrann Mathieu or Minkah Fitzpatrick. You have guys that are more in the box playing
Jamal Adams,
a hybrid almost linebacker. You have guys covering the slot. So there's a lot of different variables when you're trying to judge this position. So I wasn't trying to just all of a sudden go, okay, here are the top guys that are in coverage for safety. I'm trying to be a little bit more diverse in this top 10. So it's a reason why a guy like Minkah Fitzpatrick wasn't on this list. Would I want him on, I'm a Patriots fan. Would I want him on the Patriots? Absolutely. 10 times out of 10, I want that guy on my team. But I'm trying to put in guys that are like the Budda Bagas of the world are going to be in it, but there's also going to be, Antoine Winfield's, two totally different styles of play. One more of a strong safety, one, like I said, more of a center fielder in the secondary. So I kind of tried to mix in and mesh in a lot of different styles as much as I did try to also go 1 through 10.
Yeah, I like, honestly, I'm thinking about like having to do the safety rankings, like top 10, because it's people like to joke about, but it's really not a joke. I guess it's kind of true. I'm gonna try and change it this year, but like I don't write a whole lot anymore. And like I've written the top 10 safety list probably like 10 years, like probably like 10 times, and like I get anxiety thinking about it because
it's great. It's my favorite time of the year, right?
Right, like you're trying to relax, you're just trying to enjoy the sacks, like playing some ball. And instead you're being asked to like do this. It's just a really difficult ranking because of what you point out. Like the safety position is extremely like there's no like again, quarterback easy to do. Even like wide receivers kind of tough because you're like, well, he's a slot guy, is he a true number one? Is he number two? All that.
Yeah.
Safeties is just really, really hard because of
it's a diverse position. That's what it is. I mean, it's more than it. I mean, there's probably other positions, but it's one of the more diverse positions just because of where you can move these guys around, like Tyrann Mathieu. I mean, come on now. He is just pieced around like a chess piece all around the secondary. He can play back, he can play forward, play in the box. Like, so again, that's a little bit different than say like a Marcus Williams, who is going to be basic, and we'll see what happens in Baltimore, but he's primarily during his time in New Orleans was back in the back end of the secondary.
Yeah, and the other thing too is like a lot of that isn't just the player and what their skill set is. It's also like who's the defensive coordinator and what defense do they run. You are going to get different stuff from different defensive coordinators and different defenses. So it's tough to do. Minkah Fitzpatrick, you're probably number 11.
Honorable mention, yeah, certainly in that 11, 12 could easily be 10. It's totally fine. I wouldn't really fight you too much. And as much as I do say, obviously, guys are a little bit different. One thing that really kind of, and again, you're splitting hairs when you're talking about top 10s. It's really more tiers that we should do, but neither here nor there. People like top 10s. But with Minkah Fitzpatrick, again, a lot of this was Pro Football Reference, approximate value. You're looking at all that stuff. You're digging up everything that you can. Out of eligible safeties last year, and that was like 80% of the snaps, defensive snaps, just because you want one of those mainstays. He was dead last in coverage, like a horrible career worst type of year in coverage. And as much as we say, okay, well, they actually use him more inside the box, he's kind of a hybrid type of linebacker, Jamal Adams type vibes. You still need to be able to cover if you're a defensive back. I mean, there is still something to be said for that to some degree. So that was something that kind of knocked him down a peg. But again, extremely talented guy, obviously, in the top 10 discussion for sure.
So he was actually ranked 73rd according to Pro Football Focus. His run defense checked out at a pretty high rate, but everything else down for him last year. And I think, I think, he got paid this offseason. That's totally fine. I mean, I don't think he was as impactful last year as he was in the previous years. And
like when he first arrived to Pittsburgh, it was, oh my goodness, he has raised the ceiling for this defense tremendously. Like you just noticed it. He was creating turnovers and everything like that. It was a little bit of a step back this year. And again, that could be multitude of factors, who knows, but it's just the numbers show what they show.
All right, so Jordan Poyer checks in. Is anybody else that got snubbed that you want to mention? By the way, just so that way.
Well, if you want,
not like Cam Hayward's going to be listening to the show and be like, "Oh, never mind." Sully had a great explanation for this.
He had a really honest, way of describing it. So I'm going to.
What did the editors do you dirty and like the headlines like Minka Fitzpatrick no longer top 10 safety or something like that?
No, thankfully it's just it's just basically listing who's 1 and 2, which is totally fine with me.
It's June. It's June in the editing desk as well, Sully.
Let me think. Is there other guys that I want to mention? Jeremy Chin is probably an up and comer. Certainly going to be in that discussion as he develops. He's still a young guy. Micah Hyde not on the top 10. I kind of made the reasoning when I had Jordan Poyer at number 9. Just you can mix and match whoever you want. I took the guy that was number 1, tied for first in approximate value, and was an all-pro, the all-pro selection. So kind of just siding with the peers with Jordan Poyer as opposed to Micah Hyde. But again, they make the best safety duo in the NFL, arguably.
See, you know what I would have done if I'm pretty good at figuring out cop-out mechanisms. I would have paired them and been like, you pair them and be like, oh, Micah Hyde / Jordan Poyer, be like, it's just too difficult to separate the incredible play of both Bills safeties and how they work in tandem in Sean McDermott's defense and the way Leslie Frazier you're like, people are like, all right, that's a pretty good explanation. Like, this guy's so full of it, but I'm kind of buying it. So yeah, Micah Hyde didn't make the list. Jordan Poyer checks in at number 9, though. Adrian Amos at 10. Yep. I think you could have gotten away with Micah Hyde at 9. Jordan Poyer / Micah Hyde at 9.
Probably.
If you wanted to. Yeah. What about these guys in the bottom half? Because we'll get to the Honey Badger and I think 6, 7, and 8 are interesting players from their versatility perspective. Yeah. But Poyer at 9 and Amos at 10, sort of walk through those guys in the back end of the top 10.
Yeah, Amos, to me, I think I had him on the list last year too, and I basically made the same argument. Like, just super underrated. Kind of reminds me of that Devin McCourty, someone who I'm obviously super familiar with in New England. Always in the right position, not a ton of flashy, oh my goodness, top 10 type of plays, but he's just well positioned, extremely well rounded. He's been Pro Football Focus's number 1 safety since 2020. Wow. Let me see. There's something else I had to mention. Oh, the durability there too. Dating back to 2018, at the very least, 97% of the defensive snaps. I mean, that's half the battle. It's just an unbelievably durable player for the Packers.
Sure.
All around, great defensive back. Very little mistakes. He did let up 6 touchdowns last year, which was not great, but there was the opponents got 58.2% of their targets. So, I mean, when he let up a catch, it was for a touchdown, but ultimately he's been pretty sound. If he gets those touchdowns down, he's still one of the best in the league.
Yeah, that works for me. You touched on the Bills guys.
Yep.
Anything else you want to say about Poyer? We can jump to the Tyrann Mathieu, number 8. I have seen people get to bed at this point. Along with Antoine Winfield at 7, Antoine Winfield Jr. at 7, and Buda Baker at 6. I think all those guys are really interesting from just coupling them together. But there's a couple themes about these guys, and then you can sort of touch on why you ranked them where you did. But with the Honey Badger, he's kind of the modern sort of, or he's sort of the godfather, if you will, of the modern versatile safety. And I don't know. I mean, you probably remember this, Sully, because you're old enough, and I'm sure a lot of listeners do. But I don't know if younger folks really understand the hype that Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger, aka Tyrann Mathieu, had at LSU. He was a legitimate preseason Heisman contender, and people thought he might get it. He had issues with marijuana, basically, that got him kicked out. He had to leave LSU, and then he had to rehab his image at the combine. He fell in the draft. The Cardinals took a chance on him, but he was at one point in time at LSU, he was considered the best player in college football, and it wasn't a stretch to suggest he could win the Heisman. It didn't work out exactly how he wanted to, but he has obviously gotten paid and sort of paved the path, I think, for all these modern safeties. You can move around and play in different spots, move into the slot, shift all over the place and be creative in your defense. And Winfield, I think, qualifies a little bit like that as well. Also the fact that Antoine Winfield Jr., I'm pretty sure I covered his dad, which is depressing as hell. Asante Samuel, I know, it's all these like Thaddeus Moss is in the freaking league. Like, I mean, it's so depressing. That Winfield, I love coming out of college. I thought he was. I would have taken him in the first round. I don't think he should have fell in the second round. And then Buda Baker, who again, like the Honey Badger, very versatile. Sort of made up for. I guess was it Hassan Reddick was the first guy that the Cardinals took who was like that creative, can play all over the place.
Yep.
And then they took Baker, and people were like, oh no, because I guess they took Tyron. They took the Honey Badger first. This is all under Steve Keim's run there. They took the Honey Badger.
I get that confused. It was Honey Badger in Arizona, then it was Houston, then it was KC, right? Now it's in New Orleans. Okay.
Right, because Arians loved Honey Badger.
Yeah.
And so Keim, they took him, but like Arizona just has this history, whether it's Honey Badger, Hassan Reddick, Buda Baker, I feel like Deion Buchanan maybe is the one I'm forgetting about too. And then obviously Isaiah Simmons as well. Like they're willing to take chances on these versatile chess pieces that you can operate inside of that defense. And Buda Baker has been one that's really panned out for them. That's just sort of my thought on those three guys.
Yeah. And so with Matthew, again, it's interesting. I'm not surprised that he didn't want to leave Kansas City because I feel like he was super unlocked there, and he was still an impactful player. Like it is a little head scratching that I know they've got a younger player in Justin Reed and all of that, and they might want to move on. Like teams make those decisions all the time. It's nothing new. But when you have a player that has been so impactful and, I've written about it, the face of that defense, as much as we talk about like Tyreek Hill, Mahomes, and Kelsey on the offensive side during this Chiefs dynasty era, whatever you want to call it, Matthew's been that guy on the defensive side of the ball with Chris Jones. It's just they have been absolutely insane. And he was great up through last year too. I think he was 8th in approximate value. You got obviously a Pro Bowl nod, and he's moved around as much. We talk about the versatility. He's a box safety for 438% of the snaps last year, but he also played free safety for 280, and then he was in the slot for 206. I mean, that is pretty healthy amount of kind of moving him around is what we're talking about here. So for me, I love the versatility. I still think he's one of those elite defensive backs in the NFL, and I think this change in New Orleans will be fine. Again, I think people might say that he's going to replace Marcus Williams, but I don't think that that's really going to be the case. Again, that's just not their playing styles. It's two totally different type of players. I think Marcus May, who's also a safety and who I really like, he was just injured all last year, so I couldn't put him any higher than an honorable mention best. But he's someone who I think is probably best suited to replace that, and I think they're going to use Matthew in different pieces all around that secondary.
Like if I said over under 2.5 pick sixes just against Panthers and Falcons quarterbacks this season for the Honey Badger, would you take over or under? Because I think I'd take over.
Yeah, I'd take the over. Especially with somebody who, I think he feeds off of emotion. Again, I think we saw it especially at LSU. He loves just that environment of living up to that big moment. We've seen it in Kansas City, obviously in the biggest moments, Super Bowls and all of that. All of a sudden, you're home. You're back. The New Orleans native is back with the Saints, playing for them, and with a kind of a chip on his shoulder. I mean, there were quotes from him this offseason saying how hurt he was at the fact that the Chiefs decided to move on. He would have taken the same contract that Reed got with Kansas City and all of that. I think you're going to see an extremely motivated Matthew this season, which is exciting for me to watch.
Yeah, and worth noting that when he left Arizona, he's only 25 years old. He's still, I think people
forget that.
Yeah, he was still really young, but like Arizona sort of was like, we feel like your play has slipped the last 2 years. We're not going to give you a ton of money. He played very well in Houston, not like all pro level, but then when Kansas City signed him, as you point out, he just took off. I mean, the last 2 Pro Bowls, 2 first team All Pros. Didn't make it last year in terms of the All Pro, but was a Pro Bowler as well. And I think you could even make a case if you wanted to that Tyrann Mathieu is a bigger loss for the Chiefs than Tyreek Hill. Now that's crazy talk, I get it, but I feel like you can with Patrick Mahomes, and I'm not saying like in terms of their Tyreek Hill is clearly better at his position than the Honey Badger is at this point in time, at least based on what we've seen through 2021. And that's not a knock on Matthew; it's just the reality. But if I feel like you can compensate for the loss of Tyreek Hill on offense when you have Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and all these other weapons that you can bring in, and you have Andy Reid calling the plays. I don't know that you can sufficiently make up for that loss. And look, Justin Reed is good. That's great. But I feel like I don't know, man. I'm with you. It's surprising that they let him walk to me.
Yeah.
What about the other two guys, Winfield and Buddha?
Winfield for me is something like an ascending player. I was on with Wilson a few weeks back when we were talking, or last week, and we were talking about the wide receivers and how, like Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, they've made such an impact already.
I picked the wrong week for vacation. Like I should have taken.
I know. Could have got the offensive side.
I should have done the. Yeah, no, right? Yeah.
But I think Winfield's similar. Comes out of the gate his rookie year, helps them win a Super Bowl, follows that up this past year, and is still again one of the more ascending players in the NFL at that position. He was 5th among players in coverage according to PFF. He's only 23 years old. He allowed a passer rating of 63.9. I mean, you look at that and you say, okay, this is somebody who we can kind of build around in terms of a secondary for a long while. And I'm excited to see, him to continue to blossom. I think that this Bucs defense is only going to get better. I mean, I looked today. I didn't realize, I knew that obviously they'd be a Super Bowl favorite, but I didn't know that they're second now, only looking up to the Buffalo Bills at Caesars. And a lot of that, I think, is going to be obviously Brady coming back for sure. But I think that this defense is still going to be one of the best in the NFL. And it doesn't start with Winfield, but he's certainly a guy that's going to contribute.
Sorry, I'm trying to figure out who wrote for CBSSports.com the Antoine Winfield retires story, because I had a sneaking, depressing suspicion that it was me.
I saw something, something similar to that. I saw like David Ortiz and Manny Ramirez's sons were playing together, like at I don't know if it was collegiately or whatever, but like I'm like, oh my goodness, geez.
Yeah, it's like welcome to hell.
It's crazy.
Let's see. Yeah. Anyway,
and then quickly with Budda Baker too, a strong safety's kind of lost now in the NFL. I feel like we don't have that anymore, but he's the closest thing we have as to someone who is legitimately just that missile out of the secondary. I mean, he is one of the more physical guys that we have at that position in this league. And obviously that's going to warrant being in this discussion. If we're talking about versatility, we're not just talking about, how he does against, in coverage or anything like that, but he did just have his best year of his career in coverage this past season. Let me see if I have it in front of me. A 78.6 passer rating in coverage last year. That was a career high. And so if you're telling me that all of a sudden we're starting to get Budda Baker, who is ascending in coverage, and he's still Budda Baker, one of the more physical safeties we have in the league, that's exciting there.
I agree with you completely. I think Budda Baker is a special player, fun to watch. Let's take a break. And when we come back, Sully's top 5 safeties coming up next. So at number 5, you have God, I'm like, yeah, when you take like a week away and you just really turn your brain off of football.
Yep. I just did it. I just did it was it last week or whatever I came back? Yeah.
I bet this is like the hardest article you've written in a year. Just because you're like, oh.
It's crazy.
It's like Marcus Williams, like he did change teams, right?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, he did. I'm saying like that. I was thinking, he is on the Ravens now, right? And he is. Yeah. It's like, I mean, I know that. I know that, but my brain is still like, whoa, don't say anything stupid now.
Yep.
And then I said something stupid anyway. Point being, Marcus Williams checks in at number 5 for you.
Yep. Cashed in tremendously with the Ravens, 5 years, $70 million. And, he's another one. I thought Tyrann Mathieu was going to be a guy that would go to the Ravens, because I think that when I think of the Ravens defense, obviously you think of like elite linebackers, but I also think of like elite safety play, just because I feel like there's always that physical, electric kind of safety, whether it's Ed Reed or go down the list throughout my, football viewing lifetime. So
I thought it might have been, they brought in
Weddle.
Yeah, Eric Weddle. Like they always feel like they land that veteran safety or like it doesn't have to be like an older veteran, but like there's just always somebody who's like lurking in the back end of that defense, ready to like make you pay.
Yep. And I think Williams it's a little bit different. Like I'm curious to see how they're going to use him, because I think he's more of a center fielder, guy that lays back. I don't think he's someone who they're going to move around or hasn't moved around quite a bit. Like last year, he had 922 snaps at free safety. Like he was exclusively playing in that back end of the secondary. And so again, that's just with the New Orleans Saints. So who knows how the Baltimore Ravens are going to use him, but still when he's just I don't want to call him one dimensional, but when he's playing in that role, he's still one of the best in the league. I mean, 52.4 passer rating allowed when they're targeting him. He's only 25 years old. He was the seventh highest graded player in coverage last year among eligible safeties. You go down the list and you look at these, like, you click all the different stats and you try to see who comes up and you're trying to parse things. He's pretty much in the conversation anywhere you click, anywhere you kind of look up. He's in that discussion there. So for me, again, someone who might not be, or at least hasn't shown so far to be that like physical kind of in the box type of safety that we're seeing move around a little bit more in the NFL, but he's still one of those guys that raises your ceiling to your defense on the back end.
Yeah, for sure. And look, Marcus Williams had of course, the Minneapolis Miracle that, and I think one of the things Pete Briscoe and I've talked about this a bunch, but he bounced back from that so well. Like, that's the type of situation where it's so ugly, just an on-field mistake, that it can mar your career and like derail your play. And it was I was just always very impressed with how he, was just came back in, I guess, 2018, right? And didn't really skip a beat. It was in 2000, is that right? Yep, 2018, because he was a rookie when it happened.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was 2017 season when the Minneapolis Miracle. And I want to give a shout out to the absolutely, and now it's like, it's sort of, two of the guys are gone, so it's not quite the same. Actually, I guess technically 3 of the guys are gone. But the 2017 New Orleans Saints draft class, Marshawn Lattimore and Ryan Ramczyk, both in the first round, 11th and 32nd overall. Marcus Williams in the second round, 42nd overall. Alvin Kamara, Alex Anzalone, and Trey Hendrickson in the third round, 67, 76, and 103rd overall. That draft class completely, the Saints have gone 7-9, 3 straight seasons. That draft class lands, and they had this Super Bowl window where they really should have won one in that window. It didn't happen, but that draft class, one of the all-time great draft class. And of course, they're all, first through third round, they're early picks, but like that draft class completely changed. Really, like I think there's a chance Sean Payton gets fired or has to leave earlier. I think there's a chance that the Saints don't, maybe I don't know. I'm not saying they move on from Drew Brees. I just think that draft class changed that trajectory pretty dramatically for the New Orleans Saints. At number 4, I would do 4 and 3, and then we'll do 2 and 1 just for time purposes. Justin Simmons at 4 and Jesse Bates at 4th and 3rd, respectively. 2 guys who, obviously anybody listening to this podcast, I assume, knows those names or is familiar with those names because they're really good football players. But they are definitely not household names in terms of being superstars or anything.
Yeah, I think Jesse Bates might be because of that Super Bowl run for the Bengals last year. I think that might change it. And I think Justin Simmons too, depending on how things go at Russell Wilson now in Denver, I think that might be, you get more primetime games, you're in more, I think you start to kind of make a name for yourself because your team overall is going to be better. But for Simmons, Denver's secondary wasn't good last year. It wasn't, it was 20th in the NFL in against the pass and DVOA. It wasn't anything to write home about, but he continued to play at a high level. He was tied for second among safeties in approximate value. He had a 59.4 passer rating when targeted, which was the 8th lowest among eligible safeties. He's been pretty productive. 2019 was his best year so far. It was statistically just, one of the best we've seen. I think I even ranked him when one of the years. I think I might have ranked him 1. I don't remember. I've done this for a few years now, and I think I ranked him 1 at least once. He's been in the top 5 pretty consistently, but that 2019 campaign was absolutely insane. But he still continued at a pretty elite level in terms of his statistics. And so for me, he's someone who I think is only going to get better now when you have Russell Wilson as a part of this, because again, you're not in these tightly contested games with Drew Lock as your quarterback. You're going to be, teams might be throwing a little bit more if you have somewhat of a lead. When you talk about Russell Wilson, Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton, Tim Patrick, I think is still with them too. That's an offense that's going to put up points. And so all of a sudden you're getting a different type of offense that you're defending on that side of the ball. So Simmons is going to see a lot more opportunities, I think, against the pass this year, which I think is only going to help him because I think he's going to put up numbers there. So again, closer to a household name. And then quickly with Jesse Bates, he didn't have a great year last year. I kind of wanted to bump him down.
I was going to say, Prisco talked about this too when he was on the show and talking about where he put Bates in his top 100. And Bates came out and said that his contract situation was weighing heavily on him throughout most of the 2021 regular season, and that he sort of finally kind of got past it as later in the year, and that's why he played so well in the playoffs too. And now he's being franchise tagged. So you sort of wonder, like, will there be? Look, man, you get franchise tagged and you can't work out a deal with your team, and that can, alter your mindset. But I think being honest about that makes me feel better about the possibility of him coming in and being in the right headspace to perform in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it in all sports, contract years. Sometimes players elevate and they are just, they put out the best year of their career because they know money's on the line, and that's clear motivation for them. There's a dangling carrot at the end of the season. But sometimes it does weigh on you, and it does the opposite, where it's like, all right, like I'm a little too tight. I'm trying a little bit too hard to try to perform to prove that I'm worthy for this contract. It's possible that happened to Bates this year. If he, and he's saying that, then that's certainly, a possibility there. He did, though, in what kind of saved him in these rankings. Again, he's not number one or anything, but he's still in the top 5. He's still, I think, one of the better safeties in the NFL. But what saved him was he looked more like the elite safety that we saw last year in the playoffs. Absolutely insane for the Bengals as they made that playoff run. I have the stats here. He had 2 interceptions. He allowed quarterbacks to combine for a 35.6 passer rating when targeting against him. And then opposing receivers caught just 36.4% of their targets. I mean, just shut down as shut down could be. Made clutch plays. I think they
don't go to the Super Bowl without him playing the way he did.
Because he picked off Mahomes. He picked off Mahomes in that AFC Championship against
to set up the game-winning field goal, right?
I believe that happened. That was overtime, I think, too. Yeah, everything gets fuzzy at this time of the year. But again, he's a huge piece to that secondary. I don't know why Cincinnati isn't just rewarding a guy who's, I think he's in his early 20s or mid 20s at the very least, right? It's not like we're talking about.
He's just finished his rookie contract.
That's what I mean. Like, he's just ending his rookie's deal. It's not like we're talking about a dude like, you make the case a little bit more for, an aging veteran where you're like, all right, well, he's going to be 32 at the end of this contract because he's 28 now. And it's like, do we want to do, all right, maybe you can talk me into that, but I still think he's a top of the market kind of guy. And, or his teammates have even said so this offseason. I forget who said it, but there was somebody who was making quotes that says, we all know that Bates needs to get paid. That's not great to go into a season.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think part of the problem for him is probably that, and look, this has happened across multiple positions. We talked about it. Who we talked about it with? But the Browns, did it with, we're talking on the top 10 tight ends with Dejani. Was that this week? Probably. Whenever it was sure. Was that this week? Oh my God. It wasn't last week.
I did wide receivers last week.
It could have been yesterday.
Could have been.
Probably was yesterday. Anyway, my point being is that the Browns paid David Njoku a ton of money, and it's sort of messed up the tight end market because, like Mike Gesicki, and who's the other guy? Who else got franchise tag?
Schultz.
Thank you, Dalton Schultz. Yes. I think it was Monday when this happened. Both of those guys are not going to take less than David friggin' Njoku in terms of their contracts. And if you're Jesse Bates, you just saw Jamal Adams got $70 million with $38 million guaranteed and 17.5 per year. And Minkah Fitzpatrick got 18.2 per year and 36 guaranteed. Harrison Smith is an older deal. Like, you're not taking less than $15 million per year if you're Jesse Bates and you feel like you are an all-pro safety who is coming into his own and is, really just 2 years away from hitting free agency as a true free agent. Like, you cannot take less than $15 million a year. And my guess would be that the Bengals are not inclined to pay the safety position that heavily when they can franchise tag him at a much more cost-effective rate. I'm not trying to suggest the Bengals are cheap. The Bengals retain when they find talent in the draft that works out well for them. They typically do retain it and don't like to let it walk. Carl Lawson, and they brought in Trey Hendrickson swap out is sort of the exception. Point being is, I agree with you completely. He should get paid. I just sort of wonder if these big numbers in the safety market might have caused negotiations to stall a little bit.
Well, not only that, the one thing that I was thinking about too, in terms of what could be preventing the Bengals from paying Bates. I mean, Joe Burrow is going into his 3rd year. At some point, that conversation is going to have to start. You have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. at some point, some of those guys got to get paid. And what did we just see this offseason? The wide receiver market absolutely exploded. So at some point, those guys are going to need to get paid. And I don't know. I think the Burrow, the wide receivers, that's a big number that's looming over that franchise over the next couple of years here.
And let's not forget, too, that I really think that this is an underrated story. Jason LaCanfora wrote about it, I think, earlier, either late in the season or this offseason. But Deshaun Watson got, again, back to the Browns. They screwed up the tight end market, and they screwed up the quarterback
100%.
market for everybody else. Deshaun Watson got a fully guaranteed contract. Joe Burrow is going to want as much guaranteed money as he can get. He's not going to take 10% guaranteed when he's playing like an all-pro future franchise quarterback who can save the Bengals from being the Bengals for the rest of the time. If you're Mike Brown, you're rich as hell. You're probably not a billionaire, like very close to a billionaire. But let's say if you're worth $925 million, which is, I saw a report from ESPN. I don't know how accurate it is, but that's the report. Let's say Mike Brown's worth $900 million. Well, if you write Joe, if you have to put every dollar, you have to match every dollar of guaranteed money in a contract by putting it in escrow because of an old antiquated CBA rule and regulation. If you're worth $900 million, you're not worried about money. But when it comes to writing a check for $230 million guaranteed and depositing it in escrow, and then writing another check for $50 million guaranteed or $38 million guaranteed to Jesse Bates, all of a sudden you have a third of your net worth tied up in an escrow account to pay NFL players that you really have no issue paying with in the first place. Like, right. The Bengals don't mind paying these guys, but you don't that is, even for somebody worth $900 million, that is not an easy thing to do. So right. I think you are correct in the Joe Burrow contract factoring into all of this and how they want to build out their roster and whether or not they want to allocate a significant, percentage of their resources to the safety position. And they probably believe that, as good as Jesse Bates was, that they can, because they need to double check. Yeah, he was 54th overall in the 2018 draft. He same draft as Minka, same draft as Jamal. He ain't taking less. I mean, he's just not going to take a lot less than those guys when he's
especially if all of a sudden he's more of the player that we saw in the playoffs this year. The Bengals kind of, buck recent trends of Super Bowl losers, not really, kind of stumbling. They actually just continue to play well, which is certainly possible. And they're back in the conversation. They're back in the divisional round, vying for an AFC championship. And he's leading that defense. As much as we talk about Joe Burrow there, he's going to have a case as well.
Absolutely. Okay. At number 2 and number 1 overall, Derwin James checks in at number 2 for you.
Yep.
And Derwin James is probably one of my 10 favorite players to come out of the draft over the last 5-10 years or whatever. I can't believe he fell to 17th. Same draft, by the way. What a draft for safeties. Jamal Adams, Minka Fitzpatrick, Derwin James, and Jesse Bates all in the same
Unreal
draft.
Class. Unreal.
Yeah, unbelievable. I'm trying to make sure Terrell Edmonds was in that as well for Pittsburgh. Just trying to make sure I don't crap on any other. Justin Reed was in that draft. Wow. That's pretty impressive for safeties, man. I'm sure I'm probably missing somebody, so apologies if I am. Just trying to run through the list of safeties on there. At any rate, point being is Derwin James fell to 17th overall in that class. He was 3rd for comeback player of the year last year after only playing in 5 games in the 2019. Oh no, he missed the 5 games in 2019, missed the entire 2020 season. And it felt like he was really getting charged, where you have a really good player who just keeps getting hurt because the Chargers, for whatever reason, aren't able to keep people healthy. And he bounced back in a very nice way last year. He's so versatile. He can do it all. You can move him anywhere you want. And when he is healthy, he is one of the, 10 or 15 best defensive players in the entire NFL. So I had no problem with him here at 2. I think it's probably, if I may, Sully, more of a projection on what he might do with a full healthy season in 2022 than it is necessarily was he the second best safety in the NFL last year?
Yep. And I looked it up too. Last year I had him 10, and I was saying, listen,
and
when you have this guy healthy, you have to and again, it's projection. There's part of that in these as well. You are projecting a little bit to how they're going to perform. If he's healthy, he's one of the best defensive players in the NFL, like you said, and he comes out, plays 15 games last year, and is looking exactly like the all-pro player we saw in 2018 during his rookie year, where he was absolutely insane. And so when you put those together, it's like, all right, if he was healthy the entire time, he's probably number one. Like, it's pretty, if he's just a healthy player and is displaying that talent, he's probably number one. So I'll give him number two and dock him for the injuries. But like you said, you can move him pretty much wherever you want. And the Chargers did so. He's spread out pretty evenly. 361 snaps in the box, 224 in the slot. And as a general free safety, it was 326. I mean, that is pretty flat across the board. And he could defend pretty much whatever position you need to, whether it's a running back when he's in the box, tight ends, wide receivers, obviously. He is extremely versatile. 71.9 passer rating against last season, 64.8 excuse me, it's a 64.8 completion percentage. I mean, he is basically whatever Brandon Staley wants, he can do. And there were comments, I think it was this offseason at some point, I forget when exactly, but Staley like talks about him like he's a quarterback, where it's like, we need to build the defense around Derwin James. It's almost like he's talking about the offense with Justin Herbert. We need to build this around Justin Herbert. When you have somebody talking like that, that's when you know how impactful the player is. So for me, again, health is the biggest thing. If he's on the field, he's one of the best, if not the best safeties in the league.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And then Kevin Byard at number one. I believe he graded out as PFF's number one rated safety, an insane 90.9 coverage rating and 83.8 against the run. Pretty, I mean, like, my favorite Kevin Byard thing of all time is the Deion. Do you remember the Deion Sanders thing?
Explain it.
So Deion Sanders was like tweeting about, there's some like list or like something like that. Kevin Byard tweeted at Deion Sanders, was like, or something. Deion was like, who is that? Deion left him off the top safeties list or defensive backs list or something like that. And Kevin Byard tweeted at Deion and was like, yo, like, I mean, I would say that, there's an obvious snub on this list. And Deion quote tweeted and was like, you keep being a fan and I'll keep being the man. It was like, Deion, that's an actual NFL player on the league that you cover professionally who you snubbed and you don't know who Kevin Byard is. Everybody knows who Kevin Byard is, but like, it's such a perfect encapsulation of like Kevin Byard and just how underrated he is as a player.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, PFF's number one graded player in coverage. If you look at approximate value, he's tied for first at the position. I mean, you look around and you again, when you do these lists, you're obviously looking around like what is the consensus? What are the stats? What are people saying? And you have them pretty high on these lists, if not number one. And for me, I think that one of the things that made him so impactful last year, obviously he's been a great safety in the league, but I think what made the numbers pop a little bit more was Tennessee finally establishing a pass rush. I mean, that's just going to help everybody on the back end. So for a guy like Byard, it's just, again, the numbers are ridiculous. Five interceptions, 13 pass breakups, 88 tackles, 2 forced fumbles. Let me see. He only missed 2.2% of his tackle opportunities last season. He was pretty, when he got a line on you, it was pretty much over. And, versatile, like I said, with Derwin James. I mean, a little bit more of an outfielder, 603 on the as a free safety, but 331 snaps in the box. I mean, he's just establishing himself again as one of the top safeties in the league. And I think that the pass rush for Tennessee last year helped him a lot too, kind of pop.
All right, so here's the full thing. God, I love this story so much. This is like so. Oh yeah, look at Devo. Devo's, you're the best. So Deion said originally, he said, the NFL Network tweeted out in March 2018, so like the offseason, Deion Sanders is a big fan of the Houston Texans' latest DB edition and said, Honey Badger is the best safety in the game. Kevin Byard quote tweets it and says, how do you make this statement and not include the 2 first-team AP All-Pro safeties? Thinking emoji. And Deion quote tweets him and said, you're looking at who writers tell you who's the best. I know who players and former players feel is the best. I rest my case. You continue to be a fan, and I will continue being the man. #truth. There is no way you can take this statement by Deion Sanders in March of 2018 any other way than that he doesn't know who the hell Kevin Byard is or didn't at the time, which is amazing.
Like there's even Byard has a blue check mark too. Like I mean, you can kind of just go, wait a minute, this is it's somebody. Is it a writer? Is it give yourself ammunition? Like if it's me, like if that's me, Like he could go, "You're just a writer. You don't know.
I'm
You
at
never
least
played in the
gonna
league."
Google Kevin Byard.
Just give it a, but not even that. Like that's even a little bit too much. Just click the bio. I'm sure there's a picture of him in a Titans uniform or something. I'm sure, or it says like.
I will say that there is no actual information. Artina's son. I wonder if although he may have changed it. Something may have happened to. And he's very involved in. Like if you click on his website, it's like the Byard Family Legacy Fund. So it's entirely possible that he's changed that since then. And that
For
he
sure,
did
but
have.
I mean, when you have like, you have. I'm just looking.
You
Like,
see the blue check mark, and you just don't quote it and assume that he's a fan.
Right, but you scroll down 2 tweets, and he's retweeting PFF about the top safeties in the league, and he's on it. Like it's, it's not like we're like, it's not like it's like all, it's just a random person.
Also, you are a former professional.
That's also part of it.
Hall of Fame defensive back who talks on the league-owned television network professionally somewhere between 10 and 20 hours per week about professional football. It would behoove you to be aware of someone like Kevin Byard, who was just named AP All-Pro Safety because of his skill set. It's really more telling on Dion than anything else. So, So, all right, that's the list. Those are the safeties. I continue, we talk about, hard work, grinding on these lists. I would also like to point out that somehow I squeeze 50 minutes out of these lists for this podcast. It doesn't matter position. I'm like, listen, this is just a tough list to do, and we're going to rip through this thing very quickly. And then, 45 minutes later, we're talking about,
and all of a sudden,
yeah, I know. But Sully, look, you were on vacation, you came back, you grinded through the safety list. Good work, my man.
It's part of the job,
That's right.
I'm not going to say I'm a warrior, but everybody else can say what they want.
Look, do your job, right? I mean, that's the mantra. It's the Pat's mantra. I'm not saying that I'm a hero. I wouldn't say that.
Wouldn't be me. I wouldn't say that about myself, but you guys absolutely, you can send all the love you want.
Yeah. Send him love at Tyler Sully on Twitter. And also, if you are watching on the live stream, bonus, we're going to have another live stream coming up right after this. I think we're going to talk offensive line with Jeff Kerr. So if you're hanging out on the YouTube channel and you're like, man, I don't want to go back to work. I need these Warriors to grind out another fascinating, nebulous top 10 list in June with Brinson screaming from some living room in Raleigh. Well, you're in luck because it's happening next. Stay tuned. I'm sure they'll send an alert, but you can just hang by the YouTube channel and refresh, and it'll pop up. Sully, as always, buddy, a pleasure. I'm sure we will talk soon.